The Dutch court has ordered Shell to pay compensation over oil spills in Nigeria's Niger Delta in a ruling which could pave the way for more cases against the multinational oil firm. While the Court of Appeal in The Hague ruled that the British-Dutch company must issue payouts over a long-running civil case involving 4 Nigerian farmers seeking compensation and a cleanup from the company over pollution caused by leaking oil pipelines. Well, the case is the first in which a company and its foreign subsidiary have been tried in the Netherlands for allegedly breaching duty of care abroad, and it could have far-reaching implications for future suits brought against oil firms. Well, joining us now to speak on this landmark judgment is OGONI leader Ledum Mitee. Glad to have you, Ledum.
Good morning.
Good, fantastic morning to you. What was your first reaction when you had this judgment?
Well, my first reaction was to be happy. I felt excited. I felt it was a vindication of what the late Ken has said in his last statement before the infamous tribunal, that the day of Shell in court will surely come one of these days. So I thought that was great. Gives a lot of hope to the long-suffering peoples of the Niger Delta.
Now, after 13 years, how much of a win would you actually call this?
Well, it is quite a profound one, I would say that, because first, it is something that sets in motion a process that, just like you said, that more farmers will now feel that they can all get justice through this process. And it sends a message out there that the country's border is not going to be enough for Shell to dodge responsibility. Because long it has always been assumed that the things that multinationals do in their home country, that they can do it and they can do worse things abroad and go away with it, because they will say, well, that is how the standards in that country is. So what this does is that it opens the door that people will be able to say, well, the same standards that the companies do in their home countries, we shall hold them to it within their own jurisdiction.
All right, Ledum, the court held Shell liable for 2 oil leaks, 2 leaks that stretched over an area of about 60 football pitches. Now, that's quite huge, and 2 villages. What's the state of these villages now?
I beg your pardon?
I mean,
what is
the state of these 2 villages? Now, what's the state of these 2 villages where these leaks occurred? You have an idea?
Well, yeah, one of the villages, I mean, is next to me, so I can speak about the Goi community. One of the villages affected in this suit is in Akwa Ibom, I think one in Bayelsa. But in terms of Goi community, if you go to that place up till tomorrow and you see the devastation, you'll imagine, why should it happen and be allowed to continue to keep that state of devastation till now? I'm one of those who have felt that over the years, that it does not matter. There should not be a difference between someone who murders another citizen, maybe with a machete or with a gunshot, and someone who murders a citizen through pollution and contaminated poisonous gases and fumes that you see. That is exactly the sad state that most of the Niger Delta communities have lived. And I think it is important that this time around, we should take responsibility. I mean, companies should take responsibility for it. I believe that some of these things also are criminal, which means that that company should be charged to court for murder for several people who have died as a result of having inhaling luxurious fumes or drinking polluted water and all that. Many people have died in these communities. And I believe that it should not matter whether you kill someone through that process or you kill someone through a gunshot.
And talking about now, let me take you up on that. Is this case more of an environmental issue, or is it more of a right to life?
Well, I think it is more about an environmental issue as it was being conducted. But I believe that it should be more profound than that. I believe that the right to life is also should be affected. And it also sends a message because our own jurisdiction, we cannot maybe hold Shell for murder of Nigerian citizens abroad, but they can hold them for these environmental issues. That's what is important from these cases. But I think that, again, sends a message about to us and our administration of justice, our justice system. We should ask ourselves the questions of why will citizens feel comfortable to go to maybe abroad and not go to our own courts here?
Well, you've actually raised the question. Maybe I shouldn't ask that question now. Held in the Netherlands. I have been wondering about that. Why wasn't it conducted here in Nigeria?
Well, let me say this. I will say that from my own personal experience, as a lawyer, I think this year makes it 40 years that I've been called to the bar. And I will say that my experience has shown that there is a whole lot of legal filibustering in this country that the ordinary citizens cannot understand. Let me give you an example. Some years ago, I was litigating for some villagers over pollution against Shell. And they took two SAN that argued, and it took us 2 years to resolve the issue. What was the issue? They took an objection to say that we sued them as Shell Petroleum Development Company Limited. And it should have been the Shell Petroleum Company of Nigeria Limited. In other words, that the was not there and of was not there. And now you find this at the sort of conversation, arguments that Nigerian courts will entertain. You can't do that sort of argument abroad. So it takes time. When it takes about 15, 20 years to resolve an issue, and eventually the sort of damages you get, sometimes does not compensate for even the wrong that has been done. So when farmers are confronted with this, they will have to look at what happens. And I want to tell you what happened in that case that I'm telling you. After a while, after arguing this argument, eventually the court ruled. It took 2 years, mind you. And they couldn't understand why that should be an argument for 2 years. And the clients told me they don't want to do the case again. And we withdrew the suit. And I met them, ran into them. About 4 years later, I said, what has happened? They said, we won. I said, which court did you go? They said, they didn't go to any court. They asked their youth to block them. And Shell now settled them. Now, some people who are resorting to extra-legal steps are frustrated by this legal, technical, and filibustering that you see, and the delay in the courts. So that people now feel that there is out there some avenue outside this country where they can ventilate their grievances and get justice. It is something that tells us that something is wrong in the administration of justice.
Ledum Mitee, do hold your thoughts there. We're not done with you, but we have to go on a quick break now. Do stay with us. You're watching The Morning Show.
We're glad to have you still there, TMS, The Morning Show. And we still have the former president of the Movement for the Survival of Ogoni People, Ledum Mitee. Glad to know that you're still there. Now, let's deepen this discussion. On the one hand, Ledum, the court says Shell has to issue payouts. Fine, that's okay. But then says the case remains open and will be continued because the court needs what it calls more clarification. What do you make of this statement?
I didn't get you that.
I said, on the one hand, the court says, Shell has to pay handouts to these 4 farmers. But then on the other hand, it says the case remains open because it needs more clarification. I'm wondering what you make of that statement.
Well, I think what my understanding, not just a question of what they call my conversation with the lawyers involved, indicates that, yes, you have to pay compensation. They will have to go into the evidence about the extent of compensation. And again, we must understand this is not the last court. So it is also possible that perhaps they will appeal to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But what is important is that there has been a ruling that gives hope to the long sovereign.
All right, Ledum, going forward now, and even with this ruling, what's the unlikelihood of further repollution in the Niger Delta?
Well, the situation is continuing one. One of the things that came out from this from this decision, is that the Shell's argument was strictly, or more importantly, that the pollution has been caused by acts of sabotage. And the court says, look, you have to provide more evidence, not just to waive the allegation of sabotage, and as a result of that, then we should hands off the case because you have said so. So, and they were also ordered to put some systems that will be able to detect some of those things. So the proof is put to you to do it, and it's quite a strict proof. I think that is, again, one of the areas that our jurisdiction we have to look at again, because there seems to be some readiness to always, once the issue of sabotage is raised, then the courts are most likely here to say, well, no liability. But imagine if you put your pipelines on the ground where it is possible to third parties to go and do a break into it and do things. I think you have also some responsibility to ensure that it does not happen. And that's some of the issues that I feel that other jurisdictions have moved. If you go to India, they have tried to also say that when you are particularly engaged in commercial or economic enterprises, which oil undoubtedly is, then there is strict liability. You have to take it far more that to you to prove that you are not liable.
In fact, that really is an interesting point that you made there, Ledum, the fact that they have to take measures to make sure that these leaks, their pipelines are protected so that these leaks, in fact, they said they have to put a machine or something there to detect when these things want to happen. It's interesting discussing with you, Ledum Mitee. Thank you for your interesting analysis.
Thank you for joining us.